The Kansas Jayhawks are national champions once again. The one-seeded Jayhawks defeating North Carolina 72-69 tonight. And I'm happy to be on here, folks. I hope we can get a nice little group here for the final post-game of the season. And I know it's not football for you, I know it's not Iowa for you Iowa fans, but I thoroughly enjoyed that game, given the fact that we're not going to see college basketball again until November. I thoroughly enjoyed being able to watch another game before things we kind of go into a dry spell of college sports. I know that there's college baseball and different events, but college football and college basketball ain't going to be around for a while. And that was a really high quality game. I have some thoughts on the final few possessions there for North Carolina. Love to get your thoughts. The call line, by the way, is open 515-635-1601. I want to tell everybody right now, this is the only time you're ever going to see me with facial hair. I've been stuck at home recovering from a shoulder operation. So this is kind of the rugged me, if you will. So this is the one and only look of a person with facial hair that you're going to see. So, but again, appreciate the few that are on here this evening. Again, the line is open, 515-635-1601. The final score here tonight, the Jayhawks defeating the Tar Heels 72-69 in New Orleans behind what a really tremendous late game performance from Remy Martin. Now, David McCormick also, really tough. There was nobody on this game that really lit up the board offensively. Very balanced for North Carolina. You had a couple guys with 15, a couple guys with 13. You had Johnson come off the bench with 11. Same with Kansas. This is about as most balanced of a postseason game as I can remember seeing. Kansas has two guys with 15, two guys with 12, and a guy with 14 off the bench. As it relates to offensive numbers, very similar stats. Kansas shot a better percentage. You could say that was the difference in the game. They shot 44% from the field, 32% for North Carolina. Both teams shot probably below average from three. North Carolina shot okay from three, 35% from behind the arc. North Carolina, 28%. Kansas struggled at the free throw line, which helped North Carolina kind of stay in it late. They were 8 of 14. North Carolina, a solid 82% from the line. And North Carolina just dominated the boards. And Armando Bacot is the guy that really kept them in this whole game. And really the whole tournament. That guy just is an offensive rebounding machine. And I'll say this, if you're looking at a reason to be disappointed if you're North Carolina, you certainly you got to be looking at that number saying, how in the world did we lose when we out-rebounded Kansas 55-35? We can get more into that here in a second. Let's take our first call. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's in line? I'm doing okay. How are you, sir? Well, I'm not recovered yet. I got about a 3-month recovery, but I am on the mend, if you will. So, hey, it's all about timing, isn't it, brother? Absolutely. They did what it's really hard to do. We know that because we always talk about seeding heading into a tournament and how you don't want to be on that 8 or 9 line. And yeah, they overcame that.
Occurred. So it's not like it was an accident they were here. They earned every bit to be here.
Well, I'm sad to say this, Girl MVP, but up until just a second ago, nobody could hear you. I just had to change something on my end. So all that wonderful wisdom that you just gave to me that I heard so vividly and I'll retain for the rest of my life, nobody here that was listening was able to be honored by your wisdom.
Well, I appreciate you phrasing that way, but I would phrase it as it was probably a blessing to the 14 or so people listening that they didn't have to hear me for an extra minute or two.
I'm gonna ask the people in the chat. Can you hear Darrell MVP now? You should be able to hear him. Yes, they can hear you now. So go ahead, Darrell MVP. What else you got?
I would just like to say it's been a while. I mean, it's been a while, Corey, since I spoke to you. So what do you think about the Peacocks making the Elite Eight?
I think it looks a lot better for your team. I think it looks a lot better for Kentucky. You know, that's a real Cinderella. I mean, you know, I'm not going to call North Carolina a Cinderella ever. The only time I'd consider North Carolina to be a Cinderella is if they were out of the tournament completely prior to conference tournaments and, you know, won their conference tournament and found a way to make a run in the field. They just got so much talent. I mean, this team, I don't know how they were an 8 seed. And I know they came on late and played better as the season went on. And part of that has to be the change in coaching staff, but it's a really talented team. But they are challenged offensively. Can we agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. They were horrendous at one point in the season.
Well, they weren't great. They were great in the tournament. I don't think either of these teams is this heresy to say that I don't think either of the teams that played tonight actually played that great this entire tournament. Like Kansas almost lost to Creighton.
Yeah. They almost lost to Providence by being up 1 billion points at half as well. If you want to go a little further back. But
very true.
I mean, one of the underrated things is Bill Self adjustments at halftime. We might need to consider this the greatest coach tournament of all time because of Bill Self. I mean, the gap between him in the first half and the second half is monstrous. I don't know what type of voodoo magic sorcery he pulled out in halftime each and every game. But if you look at the first half numbers between the second half numbers, it's unbelievable.
Well, I have to ask this question, and I don't want to rain on Jayhawk fans. I got a good friend who's a Kansas fan, and I congratulated him after the game. Yeah. But somebody explain, because I consider myself to be a talking head. I'm no expert on the FBI scandal, but why is Bill Self allowed to continue coaching? Can someone explain that to me? Can you explain that to me, Drill MVP? Why is he allowed to do this?
Well, the only thing I will say is the pace of our government and the pace of the NCAA is not a blistering pace.
You're probably right. You're very much right.
Yeah, but I'm not going to assume anything about him until that's all, clear out in public either. Innocent until proven guilty in this country for a reason. So
sure. All right. Well, there were some pretty strong allegations. That's all I'll say. But boy, how many years ago was that? 3 years ago? 4 years ago?
Well, yeah, but how long has some of these programs been investigated by the NCAA?
Well, all I know here,
like 15 years for some.
All I know here, Drill MVP, is Sean Miller is not coaching at Arizona. Will Wade is not coaching at LSU. Why is Bill Self still at Kansas? That's all all I want to know.
Well, this may be this is speculation, by the way. I have no idea. I don't have any insider info, but he does have 2 rings.
He has what?
And none of those other coaches. 2 rings, 2 titles.
I know.
I don't think so. I think winning matters a lot.
I understand, but at some point, the NCAA. Well, I'm not going to give the. I think we can all agree the NCAA doesn't deserve the benefit of the doubt on basically anything anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do wonder. I mean, I see this comment from Tipsy. How long until Kansas has to vacate this one? I don't know. I mean, I really don't know the ins and outs of that investigation.
Well, it wouldn't be the first time that the NCAA has vacated a national championship, because they vacated Louisville national championship back in 2013. They had to took the banner down and they hung it up on a business right outside the arena in protest. So Kansas will probably do the same thing if they're found guilty.
Wouldn't that be a nice way to end? Wouldn't that be a nice way to end the season?
I mean, yes. I mean, what would the North Carolina reaction be to that, though?
Yeah, it's the problem with and this is the problem, and I understand what you said. It isn't until proven guilty, and I understand that's the criminal justice system. I'm not going to debate the morality or the ethical side of that, but like you and I both know, the NCAA is the epitome of reactionary, and
Oh, yeah.
everything is the problem with the NCAA is everything they do is a reaction. So nothing is ever done. Nothing is ever done for the best interest of those involved. It's just done as a panic move by, or I should say, the hand that was forced, so to speak, for the entity that is the NCAA. So they're clearly not acting on things like this until they legally have to. And it goes back to the NIL situation that you and I have talked about, Mark Rogers and I have talked about. It's a total disaster right now, and I'm sorry we just lost our caller there, but it's a total disaster right now, folks, because the NCAA put it together because they realized they had to, right? Legally, they were basically forced to, and it's not set up well. It puts schools that are able to gather enough funds together, whether that be in a collective or a just a group of boosters, a group of sponsors, if you will, local businesses, whatever the case may be. You've got it creates a very unfair advantage, and I understand wanting to be able to circulate some of these funds back to the players that the game is built on. But I think we can all agree the NCAA did this and implemented the NIL for the NCAA to be able to survive. And I don't know I wasn't there. I don't know all the details with Bill Self. All I know is there's some pretty serious allegations against him. It doesn't take away from this win. I mean, these guys still went out there and won, and that's what's unfortunate. You're going to have situations where I guarantee you, not all of these guys for Kansas were paid. I'd like to think that some of those guys are there. At least some of them are there, on their own accord and off their own sweat and hard work. But I guess my point is, it's frustrating how things are run. But boy, what's new in this world? Tipsy, your question earlier, are we going to have Coach Close on? No Coach Close tonight. I did not reach out to Gary. I figured Gary was probably wanting to enjoy a good night to himself, a night with his family. So I apologize to not have him on. Doug, where does Bill Self rank historically now? That's a good question. Do you know the answer to that question, Durrell MVP?
I do not know the answer to that question.
If we're talking total wins, he's pretty high on the list.
Right. Well, we got to see how his career plays out. I mean, with March Madness, you never know. I mean, he can win one next year, and it completely changes the conversation. I mean, who would have thought he won it this year?
Yeah, and I'm just seeing here. I'll find this information as you're.
He's probably. I would almost certainly put he's in the top 20.
So as of right now, according to sportsreference.com, Bill Self is 16. He's got 762 wins. He's not far behind Lute Olson with 776. Rick Pitino's at 807. John Calipari's at 810. Bob Huggins, 844. I'm just kind of skipping around here. Jim Calhoun at 877. Dean Smith, 879. Bobby Knight at 899. And then, of course, Coach K, Jim Boeheim, Roy Williams are the top three. But yeah, obviously he's got some work to do. But Bill Self's, he's a young guy compared to almost everybody on that list.
Well, the problem is he's not going to pass them probably in the next 5 years because a lot of those coaches you named are still coaching, and a lot of them got good programs.
Well, Jim Boeheim's struggling.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but Boeheim, I mean, it's a lot easier to track somebody down when they're not involved in the game anymore. Jim Boeheim's still winning 20 games a year about, so. They always seem to make the Sweet 16 when they're in the tournament because of their zone defense, which annoys me, ruins my bracket.
Yeah, I will say this. I I want to make it. Let me just, and I know that maybe there's other people who want to call in, but before I let you go, Daryl MVP, I want to make a comment about you brought up defense. I'm going to segue back to this game. I think it's interesting how the narrative with college basketball is that now bigs have to be guys who can stretch the floor and shoot threes. And
yeah,
doesn't McCormick shoot threes?
I don't think so.
Does Baycott shoot threes?
No.
So what are we doing here? What are we doing here saying that we have to have big men that shoot threes and stretch the floor? Those guys don't stretch the floor.
I don't think it's as big as a deal. I mean, it's a nice tool to have in your back pocket, but I mean, there's plenty of centers in the NBA who don't shoot threes as their primary thing, and they've been playing in the league for 10, 15 years, like Jonas Valanciunas, Steven Adams, Yusuf Nurkic. You can be in the league and be a biggest guy inside and be a defensive presence.
Right. And
so
yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to ask you about your women's bracket as well. We need to get the women some love. We need to give South Carolina some love for winning the women's tournament.
Have you looked back at how did my bracket end up doing?
Well, you had Baylor in your final game. Don't think that was a good pick.
I did, didn't I?
Yeah, I don't think that was right.
I don't think I did have UConn though. I had UConn.
Yeah, I had South Carolina winning it all. So I think I beat you.
Well, you really went out on a limb for that one.
Well, I had the Final Four right. I had South Carolina, Louisville, Stanford, UConn. But I had South Carolina, Stanford. So I got that game wrong. But you can't go out too far in the women's bracket just because there's a clear gap between the top 10 teams or so and then everybody else. So
I know. Well, you saw the top 20 or too early top 25. I think it was ESPN's that came out today. Iowa was 6, and I think Iowa State was 7. So I don't know about that. We'll see.
Well, you know what they both got in common, Corey?
They got star players returning.
No, they both lost to Creighton.
They did. And they're both in Iowa.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think both. But that should make you feel better. You lost to, instead of Creighton being a double-digit seed, they were an Elite 8 team. They were the 8th best team in the country.
But they were a double-digit seed.
Yeah, but they're the 8th best team in the country. The seed don't matter. Where they ended up matters. That's the hope I'm using to help me with St. Peter's.
And what was the deficit? What was the margin of victory against South Carolina for Creighton?
30.
30? 30?
80 to 50.
Oh, all right.
I mean, did you see what they did to UConn?
You know what?
I'm
going to admit something. This is really embarrassing. I didn't even watch the game last night.
Oh, well, if you watched the first 3 minutes, it was over after that. It was like 15-4 or something like that for South Carolina. And Louisville put up a better fight in the Final Four because at least they were tied in the second quarter. It was just over. They had no shot. Zero, zilch. And Gino Ariama hasn't won a title since 16, I think.
So is Aaliyah Boston, is she moving on?
I have no idea, but see, that's weird because with the women's game, some women from NIL deals are actually making more money in college than the WNBA starting off. Which is, I think Iowa State had a player that was a senior that's going to take her COVID year because she's going to have some NIL deal and she's going to make more money at Iowa State than she would in the WNBA.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, Ashley Jones, I don't know what the market here in Ames is for NIL. I mean, she's going to make something, I'm sure. She's been but I'll be completely honest, and this is not an insult to the women's game. As you know, I love watching Iowa and Iowa State women's basketball, but I also didn't watch the game last night. So maybe that means I'm not a good advocate for the sport. But like Ashley Jones is huge, and she's tremendous, and she's a great person, as I understand it. I've got some connections to her and her family, and understand that she's a very good person, and her family is sort of interesting, actually. She's from the Iowa City area originally, and Iowa did not recruit her because of some situations, as I understand it. with her family, specifically her father. But she's a great person, great player. I just don't. I mean, I'm around Ames, and I don't hear people talking about Ashley Jones, and that's no insult to her. I wonder what those opportunities are here locally, and I don't think she's not like Caitlyn Clark, and I know I'm biased, but I think Caitlyn Clark, because of what she's done for the game of women's basketball, I think she's going to have opportunities from an international scale for women's sports.
Caitlyn Clark is probably the most famous women's basketball player.
Yeah, and that's going to give her opportunities.
Did you see the promo ESPN did with before the March Madness unveil was, where they had players like Damian Lillard, Steph Curry talking about Caitlyn Clark's game?
Well, you saw her. I didn't watch it live, but I saw that they had her on the broadcast last night. Correct?
That was on the Diana Taurasi show.
Oh, okay.
They did a mega cast for the game.
I gotcha. Okay. Yeah. But my point is, I don't think, what reason would Caitlyn Clark have to leave? I mean, I think she's going to have opportunities. I know she's got a good deal with IV right now. I'm sure she's going to have plenty of other opportunities more than IV. And why leave? She's got an opportunity to stay and make good NIL money. Unfortunately, the money's not really there in the pros. I know a lot of, mostly you think about, and I don't even know, where is Brittany Griner? Is she still stuck over in Russia?
I believe so.
So it's just unfortunate. I mean, those girls are great players. Brittany Griner was tremendous, but I don't know what she's making. I'm sure she's making good money, but she's got to go over to Russia and then she's got to play back here. It's a lot different than the men's game.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if we're being completely honest, well, first off, nobody cares about the women's game in any way, shape, or form. They haven't done a good job marketing their product in any way, shape, or form as well. And I think in terms of the cultural aspects, because they're all in big cities, where if you have a team like in Chicago, well, I mean, you got so many good teams. You've got so many teams that one of them's bound to be good. But if you got like South Carolina, what do they have? Seriously, what sport is South Carolina good at other than women's basketball?
They've had years in football. I mean, listen, the SEC is king down. I mean, you know this. You live in SEC country. Football's still king down there.
But let me tell you something. South Carolina's paying this women's head coach more than their football head coach.
Are they really?
Yeah, I bet you didn't know that.
I did not know that. That's a great fact. Yikes.
Yeah, I know.
How is that possible?
Yeah,
how's that possible?
Because they're a women's basketball school. That's what they are, because they're horrible. They've been horrible at football other than the 3 years stretch with Steve Spurrier. I mean, they've been terrible. Now, they haven't been Kentucky levels of terrible historically, but they've been horrible.
Doug asks, is Caitlyn Clark eligible for the WNBA draft? I believe so, right? 2 years out of high school?
I think so, yeah.
But, I mean, again, they're just not going to see very few, even like the best of the best. And I don't know how high she'd be drafted, but even the best of the best, like Megan Gustafson was tremendous at this level. And I know she wasn't necessarily what you'd call a generational talent, but Megan was tremendous. I think she's a testament to the fact that it's hard to not only make it in WNBA, but make a good living. She's having to do a lot, bounced around. And I get the feeling that Caitlyn Clark, she's an Iowa girl. I don't think she's got any desire to leave right now. And I think she'll be here 4 years.
I mean, with the cost of tuition as well, I mean, what they can do with the NIL money is they're probably making more money. She's probably making more money and probably getting a degree in something she cares about, maybe in like sports marketing, managing, or just trying to hook up with the ESPN to be like an analyst or something for the women's game after she leaves. That's entirely possible as well. Or maybe she wants to like be the trainers. Did you watch any of the Final Four women's game? Corey?
I watched the UConn game, part of that.
Okay. Well, they had a special before the game with Kobe, and he taught actually Haley Van Lith, Louisville star point guard. And I think that's going to inspire a lot of these girls in order to do that type of thing for Kobe and Gigi Bryant in order to train the next generation. Now, that's just pure speculation on my part.
Yeah. I mean, listen, and don't get me wrong. What Caitlyn Clark has done for the game is actually good. I think there's going to be the game changing helps the what she's done, and I've seen some debates, because obviously Aaliyah Boston won National Player of the Year, which I thought was unfair. Frankly, I understand the South Carolina is a juggernaut. You look at the statistics; it's not really that close. And everybody who wants to advocate for Aaliyah Boston, well, she didn't turn the ball over like Clark. Clark's got the ball in her hands all the time. Okay.
Right.
And she's also changing the game. This is 2 years in a row she's gotten snubbed, but she's changing the game for generations to come. So I do want to address this comment. Apocalypse Sow. He says, is that Corey Bratter or one half of the band Hall & Oates? And I think you're talking John Oates, right? Now, John Oates, I think he got rid of his mustache, didn't he? No, maybe. I don't know. I am not John Oates. Apparently, Apocalypse Sow, you got here a little late. I explained at the outset, because I know have some people say, I've never seen you with facial hair. I've been homebound with my recovery, and so I'm coming to you with a little facial hair. It's the only time you'll ever see me like this. So anyways, go on, Drill MVP.
Well, I was going to ask you more about the women's game. And did you see the NC State UConn game at all?
Yes. I watched a lot of UConn because I enjoy watching Paige Beckers.
Yeah, well, can we talk about that game as probably one of the great, game was unbelievable.
And that game had emotion in it. It had, there was just a lot of, anytime a game goes to overtime, obviously it's, I thought not to change the subject abruptly, but you compare that game to like every game. This was not one of the better NCAA tournaments. Can we agree with that?
Oh,
like I'm talking about the men.
What you're looking for.
I'm talking about the men.
Well, again, it depends what you're looking for, because the casual person is going to say, yeah, St. Peter's made a run, though. And that automatically makes it great.
I don't buy that for a second. I don't care. I don't care about St. Peter's.
Look at Kansas. They came back from 15 down and won by one possession. That was great.
How many buzzer beaters did we have? Did we have any?
I think one.
We had 67 games. Name one buzzer beater.
I'll go again. I don't know.
I don't think there was one. That's crazy. That's crazy for an NCAA tournament game. Or, excuse me, NCAA tournament. That's insane.
Yeah. There was quite a few upsets, though, but...
There were.
There were a lot of upsets. Expected from every tournament.
But the problem is you have all these upsets, and then you end up with a Final Four of Kansas, North Carolina, Duke, and Villanova. I mean, that's just... some people may like that.
Yeah, that's great.
I think it's unfortunate though, Drill MVP, because you have a year where it was so balanced, and I just thought it was unfortunate. I just think, but again, there were a lot of teams that could have made the Final Four. I don't think I said it before. I'll say it again. I don't think Kansas and North Carolina played. North Carolina played pretty well throughout the tournament. I thought Kansas struggled on numerous occasions. And yet they're national champions. I think
their region was probably the easiest looking back on it by far.
And why was it? Why was it one of the easiest?
I think the SEC was overvalued. I know that's a hot take from an SEC guy, but the SEC was overvalued. The ACC was criminally undervalued.
What about the Big Ten?
And the Big Ten, I hate to say it, Corey, I think overvalued.
Well, I'm starting to think that too.
Yeah,
I hate saying that, but I don't have any other explanation now. I'm not arguing that they deserve the 9 teams in, because let's remember, Drill MVP, I don't care if you saw 2 of the 4 ACC teams in the Final Four there, but let's remember the Big Ten beat the ACC in the Big Ten ACC Challenge. Now, what was the result of the
I can come back and say we beat the Big 12 and the Big 12 SEC Challenge.
That's my point. So if we're basing everything on the tournament, then yeah, the SEC's overrated, the Big Ten's overrated. But I don't think you can do that. And I think what I've said on Twitter this past month is I think the Big Ten has a real problem in the postseason. And it might be partially because of officiating. I don't know that. Something's going wrong with the Big Ten's not winning. We talk about the drought, the national championship drought. Let's talk about these last 2 years. Like we've had 2 teams. Let's see. How many teams made it to the Elite Eight last year?
Team.
Not this year, but last year.
I
don't know if any teams made it to the Elite Eight last year. Maybe one. I'd have to look back. But this has not been good. And it's not just Iowa that's having a problem.
Oh, yeah, and let's be honest. Big Ten lost. It's not only that they lost, it's where they lost. Iowa losing to Richmond. Illinois, they should have lost to Chattanooga, and then they got humiliated by Houston. I mean, Houston, if you want to talk about a bad loss, that was horrendous. Michigan getting destroyed by Villanova. I mean, just completely destroyed. Now, that's excusable because they were horrible as an 11th seed. Indiana. Oh my gosh, Indiana. What did they lose by 40 to St. Mary's?
Something like that. Yeah.
St. Mary's?
I know.
Oh
and
my
then
gosh.
St. Mary's got beat pretty good, didn't they?
Oh yeah, they got destroyed by UCLA. Yeah, UCLA they played. Purdue, welcome to the Peacock Club.
I have to, Drill MVP, I got to let you go because I'm getting crap.
Well, I'm sorry if I'm taking too long.
Good,
congratulations to Kansas. Congratulations to North Carolina. Thank you, Kansas, for taking my all-time win record.
All right, sir. Appreciate the call as always, man.
Yeah, no problem.
We'll talk to you soon.
See ya.
Dennis. I don't have the comment here, but Dennis says, how can you say your lines are busy and keep MVP on like he is Clark Kellogg? That made me laugh. Dennis. I apologize for keeping. I will apologize for that. I enjoy talking Drill MVP. It's a last show of the season, so I hate to cut people off. I always enjoy Drill MVP calling in, but the line is back open. So apologize for the delay there. 515-635-1601. And again, we're talking the Kansas victory and whatever else you want to talk about. I see the question from Doug Fardaws AMAC, and I promised people before I am going to come on this show and talk about Fardaws and talk about Iowa's recruitment of AMAC. Let me give you the latest from the hunt for Fardaws. Let me pull up the report here. This is from Jake Weingarten, who's had the inside scoop. He's the founder of stockrisers.com. He has the podcast, the Basketball Prospect Show on Believe Podcast. So take that for what you will. Seems to be a pretty trusted guy as it relates to some of these reports. So, I mean, I don't know Jake personally, but that is his background. Let me put the next caller on hold here. So the latest on Fardaws AMAC. The latest on Fardaws AMAC is that he has scheduled visits to Washington, Houston, Texas Tech, Iowa, and he's working on one for Arkansas. So that just broke here within the last couple of hours, and so Iowa expected to be in the Final Five for him. There was a rumor going around that Iowa might be in the Final Three. The bottom line is, remember, he released like 26 schools plus the NBA draft that he was considering about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and Iowa has made it to the top 5. So that's good news. Let's take our next call here. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Alex. Do you think we get Perez? Do we get that kid?
Say it again.
Do you think we get Perez, the Utah Valley kid?
Fardaws?
Yeah, if we get him day one, does he start?
Oh, he starts. Absolutely, he's starting. If they get him, no, he's a starter. I think he becomes a starter, and I think you move Rebraca to the bench and have him spell minutes at the 4 and the 5. You obviously hope that if Riley Mulvey can develop, then Rebraca can play more 4. But absolutely, he's starting if he comes here.
What if we get him and Aiden Shaw?
I don't think from what I've been told, Alex, they're not even recruiting Aiden Shaw.
I don't know why.
I don't either, but those have been the reports. I've heard that from Rob Howe of Hawkeye Nation reported that. I believe Tom Kakert. I had a conversation with Tom, and I don't want to quote Tom, but my understanding is that there has not been any reported contact between Iowa and Aiden Shaw since he decommitted. So I'm surprised as you are, because you've got 3 open scholarships. You got Keegan Murray leaving. You've got Chris Murray probably going to leave next year. That's the thought, at least. Surprised that they wouldn't reach out. But I've also been told that Aiden Shaw's a really quiet kid, so maybe there has been contact, and we just haven't heard that. But again, I don't know. That's just those are the reports that I've heard.
Yep. We need to send in the portal badly.
I agree. Fran's there. I mean, we've had 3 guys that Iowa's reached out to reportedly, yeah, I think there's no question. Fran realizes that they're set on getting a big man. If it's not Fardaws, they'll go after somebody else. There's a kid from Iona that Iowa had recruited. There's a lot of. I mean, you got the kid from Northwestern, Ryan Young, who's out there, would be I think an ad that he would probably consider. No, I think there's options. They'll get somebody. They need somebody to play the 5.
I mean, from Indiana, that Rob kid.
Rob Finney. Yeah.
Yeah. What about
yeah. I'm surprised by that one. That's probably the most surprising of all of them because that with Desante Bowen and Aaron Eulis coming in next year, I'm a bit surprised they're going after a point guard. But, he'd be a grad transfer to give you one good year, and they do have the scholarships open.
I'm still surprised Toussaint left.
I am too, to a degree. But Chad likes to go to the Des Moines Register reported that Toussaint wanted a guaranteed 30 minutes and Fran wasn't willing to give it to him. And I don't blame Fran. I don't think you can guarantee that when you've got a 4-star point guard coming in next year. I don't think you can guarantee that to players. Guys have to work for it. And I love Joe Toussaint, but I hope he gets a chance to play 30 minutes somewhere else. I wish the best for him.
Yeah, I wish the best for him too. Thank you so much for the call.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thanks for the call. Go Hawks. And yeah, I mean, listen, Iowa's going to use the portal. They're already in the portal. There's a lot of time left. Now, the NCAA tournament's over now, so you're going to see even more. Who knows? You might see a couple guys from these 2 teams that we're playing tonight enter the portal now that those games are over. I will say this, and I want to talk about this more on a future show, but for those of you or those people out there who want to claim that somehow there is something wrong with going to the portal, and I get this all the time. The portal's bad for college basketball, whatever. I hear that with football and basketball. Look at North Carolina. One of their best players, Manick, transfer from Oklahoma. Look at Kansas. One of their best players, Remy Martin, transfer from Arizona State. Look at the kid from Miami. He was a transfer from Oklahoma. I mean, you go down the list, man. It's incredible. These top programs are getting transfers. And I'm not saying their whole roster is built on transfers, and that's not what I'm encouraging Fran and Iowa to do. But transfers are a part of college basketball in 2022. Okay. Jakob 22, there is a rumor that there's an internet rumor that Beth Mowins is your aunt. Please explain this, Jakob 22, because wherever this rumor is coming from it needs to be put to rest quickly. Please. Are you trying to imply that I sound like Beth Mowins? I have nothing against Beth Mowins. I've been told she's a tremendous person. I don't love Beth Mowins' voice, so please tell me that I don't sound like Beth Mowins. And if the internet is making a rumor that I sound like Beth Mowins, then the internet needs to be taken down. It needs to be deleted, the entire internet, if that's the case. Please explain this, Jakob 22. He says, am I a better shooter or ball handler? Well, that's a great question. Probably a better shooter. I'm not saying I'm a great shooter. Right now, I can't shoot a basketball. I can't pick up a basketball. So as of right now, I'm not a better anything, but I'd probably be a better shooter, Yakov. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Doug from Ames, Iowa.
Hey, Doug.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm doing okay. It's a little late, but
yes, it is.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about Iowa transfers and just the transfer portal. You know, basketball's changed. 50 years ago, freshmen weren't eligible, and things change. I like the new rules because, now, coaches get to leave, and now players can do the same. And there's a lot of academic reasons. And just as a general student, it's easier to transfer than ever. So
I agree. And as I've said before, whether you like it or not, whether Kirk Ferentz likes it or not, whether Fran likes it or not, you got to utilize it. And if you refuse to utilize it, I guess I got something to tell you. You're going to fall behind. That's just how it happens. And it's an arms race. And the best teams out there, the best programs out there have gotten with the program. And you got to get with the program. You're Kirk Ferentz. You got to do it. And I think Fran is doing it. Now, Fran is selective. There's nothing wrong with being selective. Sometimes transfers don't work out. I mean, look at Kansas. I mean, how much did Joseph Yesufu play this year?
I didn't really see him play that much at all.
Yeah, he transferred from Drake. I mean, had he played for, can you imagine he had transferred to Iowa? I think he would have played a lot had he transferred to Iowa.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And, with like Joe Toussaint, he's not transferring because he's angry. I mean, I think Patrick McCaffrey is like his best friend. It's just, he wants to play 30 minutes a game.
Right.
And, you can't blame a guy. The COVID year, that's the other thing I wanted to ask you and kind of mention. So we have like 8 players that will have 3 years of eligibility because like Chris, Patrick, all of them have multiple years. I kind of like the transfer rule because if it looked like, because you were talking about Cooper Koch, JR's son, it almost like they don't have a scholarship for him in 24. So I kind of like that Fran, kind of getting it where because we have 8 players that could be here for 3 years. So I like that. I think he's trying to balance off the classes. I don't know what your take on that is.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I haven't really delved into it. I mean, I think ideally, Chris is a guy who would be eligible, but I think ideally he's probably going to leave for the NBA. Patrick McCaffrey, I don't know if he'll leave early for the NBA. I doubt if his goal is to go to the NBA. A lot of these kids, if their goal is to get to the NBA, I think you could say Tony Perkins has an opportunity. I know it's early, and I've talked about him developing maybe into an NBA point guard, even if it's just a backup role somewhere. Those guys aren't going to exercise the 5 to 6 years to play 4, or to play 5, I guess. But you're right. That does create some scholarship problems, and the one-time scholarship the scholarship limit exception was just for this past season, so that does not apply moving forward. So Connor, if he comes back, which I'm sure he will, it will count against Iowa's scholarship limit. So you're right. It does create a bit of a juggling, if you will, as it relates to filling those scholarships.
I don't see him filling all 3. I see it only being 2.
No.
I don't know. Our 23 class just has the big guy that Owen Freeman, right?
Correct.
So I mean, I don't know what he's looking for the 23 class as well as in the transfer. The point guard thing, as you mentioned, I would be scared for him to bring in a point guard because he already had one transfer because he wasn't going to get 30 minutes a game. Bowen or Ulis could transfer very easily too if they don't think they're going to get. I mean, there's only so many minutes. I mean, you can't get the 13 best players. There's only so many minutes. People have rules, and I don't see where they need a point guard. That's the one I didn't understand.
Well, let's remember though, just one note on that, Doug. If they go get Finney, he's here for 1 year. So that's the appeal with, even if you're looking at, okay, a year or 2 down the road, you don't want to fill scholarships and not have enough because guys start exercising that extra year. But a guy like Finney, I mean, you're just going to have that scholarship sitting there. If you can get somebody like him for 1 year, why not?
Yep.
And so
makes sense to me.
Yeah. And is it possible that Fran could end up, if he gets one guy, say they get AMAC and they swing and they miss on a Finney, and I don't even know if they've offered Finney, but they've contacted him, or if the kid from Stanford, Jaden Dallaire, I believe it is, if they swing and miss on him, maybe they end up giving a scholarship to Luke Luketa. I mean, I know fans don't want to hear that, but if it's 1 year and the scholarship's there, why not reward your walk-ons?
Yeah, I've never had a problem with Austin Ash having a scholarship. It goes to waste if not. And, again, you can't have 13 all Big Ten players. Somebody's not going to play, I just, like I said, I just hope that they can get the right players out of the portal, and because I do think we're just a big man away from being a really, really good team next year. I know last year, they were trying to get the Minnesota kid from Davenport. Rabracha wasn't their first choice. It's just,
right. You're right.
They're trying. I would think their goal would be to get an actual 5 that will start. Nothing against Rabracha, and I don't know what he said in their closing meetings, but obviously Joe T didn't like what he heard. I imagine we have to get a 5 that will start.
Yeah, and I think they'll get one. I do. I mean, I don't even know if Liam Robbins going to be. Is he going to be sticking it out at Vanderbilt?
I have no idea. That was the big one I heard last year, and everyone was disappointed when he left for Vanderbilt. But then we went and got Rabracha like the next week. It's like I said, I hate when people are guessing because I know AMAC is like number one choice. Hey, I'm just going. I just hope we get. I know we're gonna get a couple players. I'm just hoping they're the best couple. But again, we already have 10 really good players already on roster, and I like the team other than 3-point shooting, which we talked about, and a 5. I really like the team next year.
I agree. Yeah, they need to fill pieces. They don't need to just stockpile high major guys. They need to fill spots. And right now they got a big spot at the 5, and I think they need to get a 3-point shooter. I've been saying that a long time. Now, Finney's not a great 3-point shooter. Maybe Dix, if he's ready, can come in and be that. Maybe DeSante Bowen can be that. Maybe a guy like Perkins really good, strengthens his 3-point shot. But you can go out and get a 3-point shooter plus a big man. I think you're right. If as long as Chris Murray and Patrick continue the development, the trajectory as it relates to development, I think you're looking at probably a top third of the Big Ten finish.
You do think Bowen will be our starting point guard next year, or maybe not if they do bring in the kid from Indiana, but you would think Bowen would start over Ulis, right?
I don't know. I'm hesitant to say that because I think I don't know. Fran to do that would be a tough decision. Ulis has been here 2 years. He's been pretty sure-handed with the ball. I know he's not a great 3-point shooter, not a great shooter in general. I would not make that aside. I've heard a lot of people say that, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion until I see him in a uniform.
And I'm just going over the starting line with you really quick before I get off. But Perkins is for sure our starting 2 guard. Patrick's the 3, Chris will be the 4, and we're trying to get a 5. Worst case scenario, we're back to Rebracek.
Worst case scenario, you got Rebracek, and then you hope Riley Mulvey can take a jump.
All right. Well, I feel pretty confident in April. We'll see. I love Iowa basketball. I really like your content and the stuff you do. Like I said, when I first saw your stuff, I thought, man, he's gearing a show towards me. I grew up in Ames. I have so many stories. Getting punched in the mouth because I said Andre Morris was a better player than Jedrick Wnba in middle school. I have so many stories growing up in Ames as a Hawkeye fan. But I just really want to thank you for bringing Coach on and bringing all those stars from my childhood onto your show. I appreciate it so much.
Appreciate that, Doug. I appreciate you listening. I appreciate you calling in. Always enjoy the conversation. Appreciate that call from Doug. Line is back open here for the final few minutes of this show. Final post-game show of the year. I know some Iowa fans here. I see some fighting in the chat, and I'm not going to play police tonight. I see maybe some trolls in the chat, so troll away, folks. I really don't care tonight. Okay, let's take our next call here. Possibly. Thank you for calling from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Who's on the line?
Lomansky, Corey, welcome back.
Hey, Lomansky. How are you, sir?
Good. Just like to talk about briefly maybe the importance of the NCAA tournament versus season versus the Big Ten tournament. And, how do you evaluate a program? You have, Arizona going down in the tournament. You have Gonzaga going down in the tournament. You have Michigan State, who I didn't think had a lot of talent, but they play defense. And I guess I appreciate how programs are run. You talked earlier about Kansas and what will or won't happen to them, and I don't want to dive into that. But I've been watching the Indiana program under Woodson, who dismissed assistant Dane Fife after 1 year. Dane Fife was assistant Michigan State for years, and Dane Fife was known as a player as a great defensive guru. And Dan Dockich has been commenting on how the Indiana program is run, and Woodson's one of their own. And I hope fans appreciate that we don't have a big cloud over the Iowa program. And, that you can be jealous of other programs. And there's even some rumors about Roy Williams. I have a lot of respect for why he stepped down early, but I hope people can look at a program from a broad view. And you commented a while back about, the award winners, Caitlyn Clark at the women's program, and specifically if you look at Garza and you look at Keegan and what they've done nationally for, all these kids are young, they don't remember Lute Olson probably as much as I do, and some other historic Iowa figures, but they do. If you're 10 or 15 years old, you do know who Keegan Murray is, and you do know who Luke Garza is, and you know they've won major awards. So maybe you can reflect on the Healthy Iowa program versus Indiana or other programs.
Yeah, and I know you know where I stand on Fran. I have a very high opinion of Fran McCaffrey right now because, and I know a lot of people don't. They feel the exact opposite because everything is based on the NCAA tournament, and I just don't agree with that. I do agree that it's time to win in this tournament, and if Fran can't get to the second weekend next year, then I'll admit there's some serious pressure on him. I think there's pressure this coming year, but the bottom line is you go from never winning more than one game of the Big Ten tournament to winning the Big Ten tournament in 4 games in 4 days. I think that is more than reason to have faith in Fran to be able to figure out the NCAA tournament demons that has kind of circled around Iowa since the 90s. And I agree. You know how I feel too about Fran's recruiting. I appreciate the fact that he's willing to go after a guy like Fardaws Aimaq, who's considered by most to be the #1 center in the transfer portal, and Fran's willing to go after him. Now, maybe they won't land him, but Fran is willing to shoot for the stars. And I, as a fan, appreciate that. That gives me inspired confidence that, we're not afraid to recruit at a high level. And I'm not saying, not everything's a comparison to football, but I wish that at times Iowa's football program would follow Fran in shooting for the stars, especially in the transfer portal, because that you and I both know, and I'm not going to go on a rant about quarterbacks again, but there have been opportunities for Iowa to go big in the transfer portal in football, and we've been sitting on our hands. So it for me as an Iowa guy, it's hard for me to not make those comparisons, but that's why I appreciate Fran McCaffrey. But he does need to get over the hump in March.
There's somebody in your chat talk a little football, and I'll just transition quickly and then hang up and let you continue. But you haven't had much of an opportunity to talk about the assistant. I don't even know what his description is. He's sure not the offensive coordinator, the quarterback's coach, but they hired the Colorado State individual who basically was brought over to Wisconsin from the Wisconsin head football coach. But when he was at Pitt, he worked for him, and he was good enough to bring him to Wisconsin. They went to Colorado State, worked 1 year. Head coach got fired. Now he's on the Iowa list of getting paid by expenses, but he's supposed to be a pretty good ex-quarterback coach and offensive coordinator. I find that fascinating that the transparency, the lack of transparency in the football program, to me, it makes me scratch my head because it's kind of a mystery. Like, okay, we got this guy for expenses who has this quarterback history, but he doesn't have the title. And
why is he here?
I think as far as momentum, and I'll be quiet, as far as momentum, I'm more confident in the basketball momentum than the football momentum because the lack of transparency to me in the football program is a little bit like, well, is it a democracy or are we trying to not inform the fans? I think we have a right to be informed, but I'm so lost and I have a college education. I'll let you comment.
Well, I'm going to come out with more content. I'll tell you that this week, Lemansky, and it has been slow on getting content out there. And we've had news with the portal, and we're going to be releasing a recruiting video tomorrow because we had an Iowa football player, a future Iowa football player commit tonight. But I'm going to be talking about John Budmeyer because it is baffling to me. I don't understand how the offensive coordinator from Colorado State is now an unpaid analyst at Iowa. I just don't. I don't understand it. I mean, I'd love to understand it. Now, ultimately, I think it probably helps, right? I don't know why you're not paying the guy. Maybe it's because you don't have. They obviously have the money to be able to pay him, and perhaps there's an NCAA rule that prevents them from hiring somebody else and having them get paid. But my big question is, why is John Budmeyer willing to be here for free? That's just strange to me. But just from a personnel standpoint, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's going to if there's any reason for hope at the quarterback position on the offensive side of the football, I think John Budmeyer can provide some of that to to fans, because he's a former quarterback, and these people who say, well, you don't got to be a quarterback to know how to coach quarterbacks. Give me a break, man. Come on. Like, yeah, you don't have to be, but you need to have knowledge of the quarterback position. And I heard Brian Ferentz say this past week that he doesn't know how to throw a football. Did you hear this, Lemansky?
Yeah, I don't understand the comments. I just think I just can't process them.
Listen, I have nothing against Brian personally, but if anybody's missed that press conference with Brian this past week, I'm sorry. I had a hard time making it through. He looked uncomfortable. He looked out of sorts. Did you see the same thing, Lemansky, or am I reading too much into that press conference?
No, I think there's something going on for lack of transparency and trying to, you've talked very nicely about, how does the Iowa football program communicate out to the fan base? How often? What's the content? And I think it's a big mistake not to have a press conference and talk about this the Colorado State guy. That makes no mistake that you don't communicate that in some kind of
Listen, they don't want the narrative to be that John Budmeyer is coming in here to coach quarterbacks. Because if the offense is a success, do you think Kirk wants to give the credit to John Budmeyer? Or do you think he wants to give it to his son?
I guess they must figure that most of the fan base pays attention in the fall and no other time of the year. But with the internet and programs like podcasts, I think you've got to be naive not to think there's people out there going,
You're right. I'm just saying
we don't appreciate this one damn bit.
They're not going to volunteer the information when it's going to potentially take away from Brian Ferentz. But at the same time, if this doesn't work, if the offense is a disaster this fall, then it still comes back to Brian Ferentz. Nobody's going to be blaming John Budmeyer. It still comes back to Brian Ferentz. So you're still putting your eggs all in one basket if you're Kirk Ferentz right now. And he is bet on he's bet on his son. He's doubled down. And I like Kirk Ferentz. I've said it a million times. It's nothing personal. I think he's doing something very dangerous to the program. That's how I phrase it. And I've gotten stronger and stronger in my opinion on this. And I wish the best. I hope that it works. I really do. I don't want to see Iowa go through struggles, but he is absolutely doubled down. And I'm not the only one who has said that.
I guess what I think is going on, I think Kirk, with the blessing of the AD, is trying to set Brian up for a head coaching job outside of Iowa. I don't think Iowa fan base would stomach Brian being the head coach of Iowa down the road, but I think they're trying to set up Brian the best they can to get a head coaching job someplace else. And I think that's what's going on out of allegiance to Kirk's historical commitment to the university. I really think that's what's going on.
And Michael brings up a good point too. Iowa, we assume, I don't know this for a fact, but the press release when Ken O'Keefe stepped down, it indicated that Iowa would be honoring the remainder of his contract. So I don't know how much that are they paying him the full $650,000 that they were paying Ken O'Keefe. I don't know the answer to that question, or if that means that they were paying him whatever the clause in the contract stated if he walked away. I don't have the answer to that, but yeah, I was also paying Ken O'Keefe, and he's the one guy in the spring prospectus who doesn't even have an official title. He's on the staff listing, but he doesn't even have an official title. John Budmeyer's not even on the prospectus. I'm assuming because he's not getting paid. So, it's an odd situation. I agree with you, Lemansky. And I know there's some people who will just live and breathe Kirk Ferentz and just, die at the altar for the guy. And I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to tell it like I see it. And I'm frustrated by the same things you're frustrated by, sir.
Well, I'll let you go, Corey. I look forward to your content going forward, because I think you serve a purpose for the fan base. And, momentum downhill, a snowball going downhill gathers momentum. And I think really a critical year for the football program next fall, because it's gotta go good, or people will not, what's the right word, turn their head to what's going on the year before and smile. But if it doesn't go good, the narrative will just get louder and louder. And I'll hang up and thank you for your coverage.
Yep. Pitchforks and torches. Absolutely. I mean, and people can laugh at that, but it's not going to go over well if Iowa comes out there and puts a 100+ ranked offense out in the field next year. I mean, there's no question about it. Now, I know that's a conversation for a different day. We're here to talk basketball, but I kind of wanted this show to kind of just go where it pleased. So I appreciate that call and the question from Lemansky. Joe brings up Spencer Petras, and yeah, the press conference was rough. I thought. I just thought the press conference was rough. Drill MVP says a conspiracy theory: Kirk is going to retire in a few years. Brian is going to be the head coach. The Colorado State guy will be the OC. I thought about that, Drill MVP. I don't think. Listen, a few years. You're telling me John Budmeyer is going to be here working for free for a few years? I don't. And again, you're not going to be able to pull this move off and make Brian your head coach if the offense doesn't get any better. So this may be the master plan. I'm not saying it is, but if maybe could the master plan be that Kirk retires after this year? I don't think that's happening. But I understand where you're coming from, Drill MVP. It's an odd situation. There's no question about it. Joe Welsh says the football program is in such a worse position, in my opinion, than basketball. I think to appease those that would tell me that, Iowa did just win the West and won 10 games, and they're absolutely right. I would say I think basketball is in just as good of a position, if not better, than football. That's what I would say. Tell me something that Kirk Ferentz has done in his sport that Fran McCaffrey has not done in his sport. You can say he shared a title. He shared a couple Big Ten titles, but Fran McCaffrey has won a Big Ten title. Whether you want to consider a tournament title to be a Big Ten title, it is. And so I know that's apples to oranges when you're looking at division titles and, Big Ten tournaments and whatnot. But I'm all in on Fran McCaffrey right now, and I think he's gotten to a point where fans should have some trust in him. I understand the frustration, but there's a reason to be confident. Gaddy, Jayhawks is champions. Absolutely. KU champions once again, and I'm trying to think, the last championship would have been the Chalmers year, right? Am I right? I'm not a Jayhawk fan personally, but I think I'm correct on that. And again, they did it partially with transfers. I know Yesufu didn't play a lot, but boy, Remy Martin was huge in this tournament. I didn't think Agbaji played very well for the last 3 weeks. But when you have McCormick stepping up, and when you have when you have Lightfoot and you have Remy Martin and you go down the list, it's a gritty team, and didn't play the best, I didn't think, throughout the tournament, but found a way to get it done against a really hot North Carolina team. Grant says he thinks Kirk is grooming Brian to become head coach at Iowa after he steps down. All evidence points to this. I think it became cemented, at least in my mind, when he got the QB coach job. That I'm sure that's the plan, but I just don't know how you're going to pull it off unless things again. Kirk, I think right now, Brian has 1 year. He's got 1 year, and I'm not saying that Kirk's going to fire him if the offense isn't any better, but something's going to change. If they go out this year and the offense is a disaster, I cannot foresee a situation or a scenario where Brian is the offensive coordinator next year. I just cannot foresee that. There's going to be a lot of pressure, and they've done it to themselves by making this move. And there have been really big names calling Kirk out for this. Chuck Long being one. Chuck Long spoke on KCJJ radio here a couple weeks ago, basically calling it nepotism. And I've been hesitant to use that word, but isn't that kind of what it is, folks? I mean, whether you like Kirk or not, that's what this is. It's what this is. When we continue to promote your son who hasn't proven himself, how is that not nepotism? That's what it is. But I don't think there's a scenario where Brian is just elevated to head coach unless he produces several years, or at least a couple of years, of stellar offensive play. And we're not even close to that. You got to get to decent to average before we can start talking about stellar. And we're not even close to that point. So I don't think that's going to happen, Grant, but certainly I think, Kirk would love for that to happen. Joe says, from a coaching perspective, the football program is in a worse position. We were stuck in an offense where we do 2 straight fullback runs against Wisconsin after a timeout. Yeah, I understand that perspective. I thought if you just look at it from, direct comparison between the football program and the basketball program, what made a bigger jump in 2021/2022? What made a bigger jump, the Iowa football offense or the Iowa basketball defense? Answer that question. Maybe I'll do a video on that. Which unit made the bigger jump? Iowa basketball defense or Iowa football offense? And I think it's pretty clear on that. Not saying either is great, but I think it's clear which one made the bigger jump. Meredith, Kansas 2022 men's champions. Congratulations to the Jayhawks. Whether you're critical and you're speculating on, will the NCAA infractions, the FBI investigation come back to bite Bill Self down the road? It's sure been a while since those allegations were initially exposed, but for now, Kansas deserves all the credit. They did go out and win the games, and the kids, including Remy Martin, who is a great story. Undersized kid, played at Arizona State, was a hot commodity there, and really stepped up late in the season for the Jayhawks. All right. I think we're good. We're at an hour, folks. I wanted to be on for about a half an hour, and I stayed on a bit longer. Appreciate, as always, everybody's phone calls and chats this evening. A reminder that I will be live with Mark Rogers, the voice of college football, tomorrow. I'm going to put this up on the actually, I'll share this via banner. If anybody wants to donate to the channel, you're welcome to do so. Please donate in the description below. There is a link to donate to the channel. Helps me produce content, be able to support this channel and support the work that I'm doing here. And always appreciate the friendly donations and the generous donations. But I will be back tomorrow with Mark Rogers over at the Iowa at the Voice of College Football channel. So if you're not already subscribed there, be sure to subscribe here first from the Hawkeye of the Storm. But I am live each and every Tuesday at 4:30 p.m. Central Time with the Voice of College Football, Mark Rogers. We'll be talking about Iowa football, including a new commitment for 2023. So stay tuned to that tomorrow, 4:30 p.m. over at Iowa football at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. I am not going anywhere, folks. I know this is the last post game of the season, but as it relates to live shows, we'll have Hawkeye Hangout call-in shows and other content. So stick it out. Spring game is April 23rd to Real MVP. So plenty of content coming from me and Mark in the coming weeks. So stick right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm in Iowa at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. Have a great night.